I never thought much about doors until Marcus started holding them open for me. It was such a small gesture, really, the kind of thing you're supposed to notice politely and then forget about. But there was something about the way he did it, standing there every single morning with that half smile, his hand steady on the glass door of our office building, waiting, always waiting, like I was someone worth waiting for. The first time it happened, I was running late, juggling my laptop bag and a coffee that was too hot and too full, trying not to spill it all over my shirt before I even made it to my desk. It was one of those Monday mornings where everything feels harder than it should be, where you're already exhausted and the day hasn't even started. I was rushing toward the entrance when I saw him ahead of me, this tall guy with dark hair that fell across his forehead in a way that looked effortlessly perfect. He'd just reached the door when he glanced back, saw me struggling, and stopped. He held the door open wide and stepped aside, giving me plenty of room to stumble through. "Thanks," I muttered, barely looking at him, already mentally rehearsing the apology I'd have to give my boss for being late to the morning meeting. "No problem," he said, and there was something warm in his voice that made me actually look up at him for a second. He had these eyes, deep brown and kind, the sort of eyes that seemed to really see you, not just glance past you like most people do in the morning rush. I nodded and hurried past, but I felt his gaze follow me to the elevator. The second time, I told myself it was a coincidence. It was Tuesday, and I was actually on time for once, walking at a normal pace instead of sprinting. As I approached the building, I saw him again, about 10 steps ahead of me. He reached the door first, pulled it open, and then, instead of going through, he turned and looked directly at me. He smiled, that same half smile, and held the door open, waiting. "Good morning," he said as I walked through. "Morning," I replied, feeling oddly flustered. "You didn't have to wait." "I know," he said simply, and followed me in. By Wednesday, I was looking for him. I didn't want to admit it to myself, but as I walked from the parking garage to the building entrance, my eyes were scanning ahead, searching for that tall figure with the dark hair. And there he was, right on schedule, reaching the door just before me. He opened it, stepped aside, and waited with that patient smile. "This is becoming a habit," I said, trying to sound casual, maybe a little teasing. "Is that a bad thing?" he asked, and there was something playful in his tone that made my stomach do a small flip. "No," I said, meeting his eyes for just a moment longer than necessary. "Not bad at all." "I'm Marcus, by the way," he said as we walked toward the elevator bank together. "Daniel," I told him, and when we shook hands, his grip was firm and warm, and he held on just a fraction of a second longer than a normal handshake would require. Thursday morning, I woke up thinking about him. It was ridiculous, really. We'd barely exchanged more than a few sentences, and yet I found myself choosing my shirt more carefully, making sure my hair looked decent, leaving my apartment 5 minutes earlier than usual. I told myself I was just being professional, wanting to make a good impression at work, but I knew the truth. I wanted to see him. I wanted him to see me. He was there, of course, waiting by the door like it was his job, but this time, when I approached, he wasn't just holding the door. He was holding 2 cups of coffee, and he extended one toward me. "I noticed you always have coffee in the morning," he said, and there was something almost shy in his expression, like he was worried he'd overstepped. "Figured I'd save you a trip to the cafe inside. It's just black coffee, I hope that's okay. I didn't know if you take cream or sugar." I stared at him, at the cup he was offering, and felt something warm bloom in my chest. "Black is perfect," I said, taking the cup from him. Our fingers brushed, and I swear I felt electricity. "Thank you, Marcus. You really didn't have to do this." "I wanted to," he said, and the way he looked at me when he said it made me feel like I was the only person in the world. We rode the elevator together that morning, standing close in the crowded space, and I was hyper-aware of every inch of distance between us. He smelled like cedar and something clean, like fresh laundry or rain. We worked on different floors, I'd learned. He was in marketing on the 7th floor, I was in finance on the 9th. But those few minutes together in the morning were quickly becoming the best part of my day. Friday, I got there early, wanting to beat him to the door, wanting to be the one who waited for once. But when I arrived, he was already there, leaning against the wall beside the entrance, scrolling through his phone. When he saw me, his face lit up in a way that made my heart race. "You're early," he said, grinning. So are you, I countered. Guess we both had the same idea, he said, and there was something meaningful in the way he said it, like we were acknowledging something without actually saying it out loud. He held the door open for me anyway, like he couldn't help himself, and I brushed past him close enough to feel the warmth radiating from his body. That weekend felt endless. I kept replaying our interactions in my mind, analyzing every word, every glance, trying to figure out if what I was feeling was mutual or if I was just projecting my own hopeful fantasies onto a guy who was simply being friendly. I'd been down this road before, misreading signals, convincing myself that someone's kindness meant something more than it did. I'd learned to be careful, to protect my heart, to not let myself hope too much. But Marcus felt different. The way he looked at me, the way he went out of his way to make these small gestures, bringing me coffee, waiting for me every morning like it mattered, like I mattered. It felt intentional. It felt like maybe, just maybe, he was feeling this too. Monday morning arrived, and I was nervous in a way I hadn't been since high school. I changed my shirt 3 times, finally settling on a dark blue button-down that I knew looked good on me. I left early, my heart pounding as I walked toward the building. And there he was, right where I knew he'd be, but this time he looked nervous too. He was shifting his weight from foot to foot, running his hand through his hair, and when he saw me approaching, he took a deep breath, like he was steeling himself for something. "Daniel," he said as I got closer, and my name sounded different in his mouth, more intimate somehow. "I have to ask you something, and if I'm reading this wrong, just tell me and we can pretend I never said anything." My heart was hammering so hard I was sure he could hear it. "Okay," I managed to say. "Would you maybe want to get dinner with me sometime? Like an actual dinner, not just coffee in the morning. A date." He said that last word carefully, watching my face for any sign of rejection. I felt like I couldn't breathe, like all the air had been sucked out of the world, but in a good way, in the best possible way. "Yes," I said, and my voice came out rougher than I intended. "Yes, I'd really like that." The smile that spread across his face was radiant, transforming his features from handsome to absolutely beautiful. "Yeah? Really?" "Really," I confirmed, smiling so wide my cheeks hurt. "I've been hoping you'd ask." "You have?" He seemed genuinely surprised, like he hadn't noticed the way I lit up every time I saw him, the way I started arriving earlier and earlier just to maximize our time together. "Marcus," I said, shaking my head in disbelief, "I've been thinking about you constantly. Every morning, holding that door open for me, it's been the best part of my day. Every single day." He stepped closer, close enough that I could see the flecks of gold in his brown eyes, close enough that I had to tilt my head back slightly to maintain eye contact. "Mine too," he said softly. "From the very first morning, when I saw you rushing in with your coffee, looking stressed and beautiful and so focused, I wanted to know you. I wanted to make your mornings a little easier. I wanted to give you a reason to smile." "You did," I told him, my voice barely above a whisper. "You really did." We stood there for a moment, just looking at each other, and I was aware of other people passing by us, entering the building, probably wondering why we were blocking the entrance. But I didn't care. Nothing else mattered except Marcus and the way he was looking at me, like I was something precious. "I should probably actually open the door," he said finally, laughing a little, and the sound was warm and genuine. "Probably," I agreed, but neither of us moved. Finally, he reached for the door handle, pulled it open, and gestured for me to go through with an exaggerated formal bow that made me laugh. As I passed him, he leaned in close and whispered, "How about tonight, for dinner?" "Tonight's perfect," I said, and meant it with every fiber of my being. That day at work was a blur. I couldn't concentrate on anything, couldn't focus on the spreadsheets and reports that usually consumed my attention. All I could think about was Marcus, about the dinner we'd have that evening, about what it would be like to sit across from him at a table, to talk without the time pressure of getting to work, to maybe, if I was brave enough, reach across and hold his hand. He texted me around noon, in Denver. I'd given him my number that morning before we'd separated at the elevators, and seeing his name pop up on my phone made my stomach flutter. "There's this Italian place near the waterfront," his message said. "Small, quiet, amazing food. Pick you up at 7? "Perfect," I texted back, then stared at my phone, wondering if I should say more, something flirtier or more meaningful. Before I could overthink it, another message came through. I've been distracted all day. Can't stop thinking about tonight. About you. I read those words 3 times, feeling warmth spread through my chest. Same here, I wrote back. 7 can't come fast enough. The afternoon crawled by with agonizing slowness. I watched the clock, watched the minutes tick past with excruciating patience. At 5, I gave up any pretense of working and headed home to get ready. I showered, taking extra care, then stood in front of my closet for what felt like hours, trying to decide what to wear. Too formal would seem like I was trying too hard. Too casual might seem like I didn't care enough. I finally settled on dark jeans and a gray sweater that my sister had once told me made my eyes look incredible. At 6:45, I was ready and pacing my apartment, too nervous to sit down. When my phone buzzed at 6:58 with a text saying, "I'm downstairs," I practically ran out the door. Marcus was leaning against a sleek black car, and when he saw me coming down the steps of my building, he straightened up, and I watched his eyes travel over me in a way that made me feel seen and desired. He was wearing dark pants and a fitted burgundy shirt that emphasized his broad shoulders, and he looked so good it was almost unfair. "Hi," he said as I approached, and there was something breathless in his voice. "Hi," I replied, suddenly shy now that we were here, now that this was really happening. He opened the passenger door for me, and I had to laugh. "You're really committed to this door-opening thing, aren't you?" "For you, always," he said, and the sincerity in his voice made my heart skip. The restaurant was exactly as he'd described, small and intimate, with soft lighting and candles on every table. We were seated in a corner booth, close and private, and when the waiter brought menus, Marcus and I both reached for them at the same time, our hands colliding, and we laughed at the awkwardness of it. "I'm nervous," he admitted, and I loved him for saying it out loud. "Me too," I confessed, but in a good way. We ordered wine and food that I barely tasted because I was too focused on Marcus, on the way he leaned forward when he talked, fully engaged, asking me questions about my life, my family, my dreams. He told me about growing up in Oregon, about moving here for work 3 years ago, about how he'd always felt a little out of place until recently. "Until recently?" I prompted. He met my eyes across the table, and the intensity of his gaze made my breath catch. "Until I started seeing you every morning, until I had something, someone, to look forward to." I reached across the table then, couldn't help myself, and placed my hand over his. His fingers immediately intertwined with mine, and the contact felt electric and right and like coming home. I was so afraid I was imagining it, I said quietly. That what I was feeling was one-sided. I've been wrong before, you know. I've misread situations, convinced myself someone was interested when they were just being nice. "Daniel," Marcus said, squeezing my hand gently, "I've been holding that door open for you every single morning because I couldn't stand the thought of missing even one chance to see you, to be near you, even if it was just for a few seconds. I've been showing up earlier and earlier just in case you came early too. This isn't me being nice. This is me being completely, helplessly interested in you." I felt tears prick at the corners of my eyes, overwhelmed by the honesty of his words, by the vulnerability of his confession. "I don't know what to say," I admitted. "You don't have to say anything," he said. "Just stay. Be here with me. Let this be real." "It's real," I assured him. "This is the most real thing I've felt in a long time." We talked for hours, the restaurant emptying around us until we were nearly the last customers there. We talked about everything and nothing, about our childhoods and our fears, about the books we loved and the movies that made us cry. Marcus told me about coming out to his parents when he was 22, about how terrified he'd been, about how they'd surprised him by being completely accepting and loving. I told him about my own journey, about the years I'd spent trying to be someone I wasn't, about the relief and fear that came with finally being honest about who I was. "It's brave," Marcus said, "being yourself when the world doesn't always make it easy. You're brave, Daniel." No one had ever called me brave before. Cautious, yes. Careful, definitely. But brave? That was new. And hearing it from Marcus, seeing the admiration in his eyes, made me want to be brave, made me want to be worthy of that word. When we finally left the restaurant, the night air was cool and crisp, and Marcus took my hand as we walked to his car. It felt natural, his fingers laced through mine, the warmth of his palm against mine. He drove me home, but when we pulled up in front of my building, neither of us moved to get out. "I don't want this night to end," I said, turning to face him in the dim light of the car. "Then let's not let it," Marcus replied. He reached over, cupping my face with his hand, his thumb brushing across my cheekbone. "Can I kiss you?" "Please," I whispered, and then his lips were on mine, soft and warm and perfect. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, both of us learning the shape of each other. But then I reached up, threading my fingers through his hair, pulling him closer, and the kiss deepened, became something urgent and necessary. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathing hard, and Marcus rested his forehead against mine. "Come upstairs," I said, the words tumbling out before I could second-guess them. "Just to talk, or not talk. I just don't want you to leave yet." "Okay," he said simply, and we got out of the car, hands finding each other again immediately. My apartment was small but comfortable, and I was suddenly self-conscious about the dishes I'd left in the sink that morning, the books scattered across my coffee table. But Marcus didn't seem to notice or care. He looked around with genuine interest, taking in the framed photos on my shelves, the plants I was somehow managing to keep alive on the windowsill. "This is nice," he said. "It feels like you." We settled on the couch, close enough that our thighs were touching, and talked more, our voices quieter now in the intimate space of my home. Marcus told me about his dreams of maybe starting his own marketing firm someday, about his love of hiking, and how he'd been wanting to explore more of the trails around the city, but hadn't found anyone who wanted to join him. "I'd go with you," I offered. "I'm not exactly an experienced hiker, but I'd like to try." "I'd like that," Marcus said, smiling. "I'd like doing anything with you, honestly." As the night grew later, we shifted closer until I was leaning against his chest, his arm around my shoulders, and it felt so comfortable, so right, like we'd been doing this for years instead of hours. I could hear his heartbeat, steady and strong, and I felt safe in a way I hadn't felt in a long time. "I should probably go," Marcus said eventually, though he made no move to leave. "It's late, and we both have work tomorrow." "I know," I said, but I didn't move either. "Same door, same time?" "Always," he promised. Though now I get to look forward to more than just those few minutes in the morning. "Much more," I agreed, tilting my head back to look up at him. He kissed me again, slow and sweet, and I felt myself melting into him. When he finally did leave, after several more kisses at the door, after promising to text me when he got home, after one last lingering look, I closed the door and leaned against it, unable to stop smiling. My phone buzzed a few minutes later. "Home safe. Already missing you. Sweet dreams, Daniel." "Sweet dreams, Marcus," I texted back and climbed into bed, my mind replaying every moment of the evening, every word, every touch, every kiss. The next morning, I woke up early, energized despite the late night. I got ready with care, excitement bubbling up inside me at the thought of seeing Marcus again. When I walked toward the office building, my eyes searching for him, I saw him already there, standing by the door with 2 cups of coffee and a smile that made my entire world brighter. "Good morning," he said as I approached, and there was something different now, something more open and joyful in his expression. "Good morning," I replied, taking the coffee he offered and letting my hand linger on his for a moment longer than necessary. He opened the door, just like he had every other morning, but this time, as I walked past him, he leaned in close and whispered, "Last night was perfect." "It really was," I agreed, and we rode the elevator together, standing closer than we needed to in the empty car, stealing glances and soft smiles. The weeks that followed were a blur of happiness. Marcus and I fell into a rhythm, our mornings at the door becoming a cherished ritual, our evenings filled with dinners and long walks and conversations that stretched into the early hours. We went hiking on a Saturday, and I learned that Marcus was patient and encouraging when I struggled up steep trails, that he knew the names of different birds and plants, that he looked at nature with the same appreciation and wonder he seemed to look at everything in his life. We had our first real argument about a month in, something stupid about scheduling and miscommunication, and I was terrified that it would be the end, that we'd been too good to be true. But Marcus showed up at my door that evening, not with flowers or grand gestures, but with honesty. "I'm sorry," he said. "I should have communicated better. I don't want to fight with you, Daniel. I want to work through things with you." And we did. We talked it through, learned how to navigate disagreements with respect and care, and came out stronger on the other side. 3 months in, Marcus asked me to be his boyfriend officially, even though we'd basically been acting like boyfriends since our first date. We were in his apartment cooking dinner together, and he just stopped in the middle of chopping vegetables and said, "I know we haven't really labeled this, but I want you to know that you're it for me. You're my person. Will you officially be my boyfriend?" I dropped the spoon I was holding, not caring that it clattered to the floor, and crossed the kitchen to kiss him. "Yes," I said against his lips. "Yes, absolutely yes." Now, 6 months later, I still look forward to that morning ritual. Marcus still holds the door open for me every single day, still waits with that patient smile, still hands me a cup of coffee, like it's a sacred offering. People at work have noticed, have made comments about the guy who's always waiting for me, and I don't hide my smile when I tell them he's my boyfriend. I don't hide anything anymore, because Marcus taught me that love doesn't have to be complicated or hidden or afraid. Love can be as simple as holding a door open every morning, as constant as showing up, as brave as being honest about what you feel. He held the door open for me, literally and metaphorically, and I walked through into a life I didn't know I could have, into happiness I didn't know I deserved. And every morning, when I see him standing there waiting for me, I fall in love with him all over again.